the participants who are coming in, we're just trying to get Facebook Live, so that should be starting shortly.
Okay. Do we know where Scott is?
Yeah,
he just emailed me about something else.
yeah,
I
me
don't
too.
know.
Me too. So I'm surprised.
Okay, Chair, we are live on Facebook.
Okay, I'm Marti Campbell. I'm the chair of the Sonoma Coast MAC, and I'll call this meeting to order at 5:31 on September 15th. I hope you all paid your estimated taxes if you have to pay them. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance
Okay,
as soon as Jason finds the flag.
okay, here we go.
Okay,
I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag
of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under God,
Under God,
indivisible, with liberty
and
justice for all.
for all.
Okay,
Okay,
you.
thank you.
I'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, Wanda.
I'll
Second.
them.
Okay, thanks, Beth. Okay, and I'm gonna do, oh, just a minute, I apologize. I didn't do the roll call. Sorry, got a little thrown off. Is it okay if I go back and I'll,
Yeah,
okay, so let me quickly do the roll call and I'm gonna include the alternates also. Beth,
Here.
Scott? Not yet.
Scott's in the attendees link.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you'll just move him over, or I'll just say he's here.
I'm
Marty?
promoting him now.
Okay, Abby,
Here.
great. Wanda,
Here.
Jill Lippett will be a little late. Brian,
Here,
Ginny,
Here.
okay. And then let me just quickly, I'm gonna do the alternates. Che, Annie, Caroline Madden, Liz Gallagher, and Carl. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. I'll go back to the approval of the agenda. We have a motion to approve in a second. And I'll go ahead and take a roll call for the vote here. Beth?
Aye.
Thank you. Scott?
Aye.
Marty?
I,
Abby?
I.
Wanda?
Aye.
Brian?
aye.
Ginny?
Aye.
Okay, it passed. And does anyone have a statement of a conflict of interest on the any of the council members? Okay. Any correspondence, Marty or Leo?
no, I'm not aware of any.
Okay. I am going to turn it over to Marty for the consent.
The first item on the agenda is the consent calendar. And I have some amendments to make to the minutes, so I'm going to remove them from the consent calendar. So my corrections to the minutes are on page 7 of the minutes. The first one is in the paragraph that begins, Leo Chi was not here to represent Permit Sonoma. And there's a reference in the second line to the Planning Commission, and that was actually the Board of Supervisors. So it should read, Permit Sonoma is working hard to get this document done 30 days prior to the Board of Supervisors meeting. And the second correction is in the last paragraph on that page, where in the paragraph that begins, Leo Chi has been impressed with a level of engagement. And in the second section, a second sentence, a new version, it should read, for the Board of Supervisors meeting will be ready after the Planning Commission's June 29th meeting.
Okay.
And those are the substantive corrections I found to the minutes for the meeting. Did anyone else find corrections to the minutes? Okay,
Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Thanks, Wanda. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Beth. Okay, let me do a roll call here. Beth,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
oh, there he is. Marty,
aye.
Abby,
I.
Wanda.
Aye.
I don't think Jill is here yet. Brian
Aye.
and Ginny.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Marty.
Okay, do we have any comments from the public regarding items that are not on the agenda for today?
So if there's members of the public who would like to comment, now is a time that you can raise your hand in the Zoom app. Looks like everybody on Zoom is in here. We are also keeping an eye on Facebook as well, although Zoom is the more official place. I don't see any hands raised.
Okay.
Yeah.
So moving on to the regular calendar items, Supervisor Hopkins, it's great to see you here and we're all ears.
Great. So I think, Gary and Ross will be covering the bulk of the county update and really look forward to hearing from them about vacation rentals. But I did want to share a bit about a meeting that took place earlier this week, and also to thank Chair Campbell and Vice Chair Lubitz for their participation in the meeting. So was it just yesterday, actually? Is that possible?
It was just yesterday.
Which is crazy. It feels like so much has happened since then. We did have an all-day meeting held in Bodega Bay to specifically engage stakeholders that still had some concerns regarding the local coastal plan, folks who had been sort of participating in the process for quite some time and wanted the opportunity to engage directly with staff. So it was actually kind of like a day of Zoom meetings, but in person, where we had people scheduled every half hour, and it was sort of in and out. So we had an opportunity to meet with Bodega Bay Public Utility District, regional parks. We also met with the HOA in Bodega Harbor, as well as a group of environmentalists who have been advocating and following the local coastal plan process for really the better part of the decade. And really grateful to have Marty and Brian join us. They not only came, sort of to present some perspectives of their own, but also then had an opportunity to listen in on some of the other meetings. We did also host the director and associate director of the Bodega Marine Lab. And we actually talked to them about maybe they could also participate in a future MAC meeting. They're both relatively new to the position, and sort of as we emerge from the pandemic, are really excited to work and collaborate more closely with the community. And actually, I believe this will be the very first local coastal plan in which the Marine Lab is actually sort of expressly called out and discussed, and where we're actively partnering with them on supporting research and education on our coastal lands. So really, really grateful to everyone who came. And if you were not sort of part of that group meeting yesterday, there is still an opportunity to participate in the process. It will be coming back before the Board of Supervisors in October. And based on the meeting that we had yesterday, Gary mentioned that there may be some outstanding items that are not quite ready for prime time at that Board of Supervisors meeting. And I also just want to say a huge thank you to Gary and Cecily and Vern and other staff who have been working tirelessly on a local coastal plan. It has been a very long process, and we are very excited to see it get across the finish line. And yet we also want to make sure we get it right. So they've been extremely patient at incorporating community feedback and making sure, that those modifications and edits are made before it moves on to the Coastal Commission. And as Gary reminded us all yesterday, technically the Coastal Commission is looking at the local coastal program, of which the local coastal plan is only one element. We also have sort of two subsequent elements, which will really be more about implementing the local coastal plan. And perhaps he can kind of give a brief preview of that process before he jumps into his sort of other topic that he's bringing forward today. But essentially, we're going to also have the administrative manual and the rezoning that happens as part of this. And so that will then have their own public engagement process, their own process of going through the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors and Coastal Commission approval. And we also hope to keep this a little bit more of a living document than past iterations have been. So the idea is that this will actually be looked at every 5 years and not, sort of every 20 or 30 or however many decades it has been since we've really, gone this in depth with updating this. So I don't know if Gary, did I do a decent job of covering that overview? You want to jump in?
Except you didn't laugh when you said every 5 years.
That's true. we did have a conversation yesterday. We're like, we'll believe that when we see it.
But it is in there as a policy, and I think that's an important first step. Is let's put it in writing that it's our desire to have this be a living document. But yeah, thank you.
Yep, not a set it and forget it kind of a thing. So that is sort of the primary update that I have to share with all of you. Actually, there is one other thing which is a little bit less relevant, of course, because of the nuances of the coastal zone, which is that we are also going to be looking at bike events before the end of the year. And then also embedded in the local coastal plan is actually a conversation around events for the first time as well. And that might be something that Gary can potentially highlight a little later on. And one other thing that I learned yesterday from staff is that one thing that I have been working on for years that actually is relevant in the coast is our on-site wastewater treatment system policy. Supervisor David and Rabbit and I have served on a quote unquote OWTS ad hoc for several years now. And we are really trying to support cost-effective, innovative, state-of-the-art, sort of cutting-edge wastewater treatment solutions. And so, we look forward to continuing to work with staff on making sure that that manual is as flexible as possible, which can also support things like housing, in hard to reach areas, which we all know that is rampant along the coast. And that was something that Chair Campbell actually brought up in her excellent letter that she submitted to staff yesterday.
Okay, thank you, Lynda. Now we'll have a presentation by Ross Markey and Gary Helfrich regarding vacation rental policy after a brief update from Gary about the LCP process. Thank you, Gary.
Okay, and thank you, Marty. As everyone knows, we've just finished 35 hours and 1 year's worth of hearings before the Planning Commission, and now have a Planning Commission recommended draft. That we held a workshop with the board to give the board sort of a preview on August 30th, and also to allow the Planning Commission document to circulate for a reasonable period of time. And the Coastal Commission actually requires, when it gets to this point, that we have to have it available for at least 6 weeks. And so therefore there's the beginning of actual decision making won't happen until October 4th. And as Supervisor Hopkins pointed out, it's highly likely there's going to be more than one hearing. We're not sure at this point then when it will go to the Coastal Commission for certification, because traditionally the Coastal Commission likes to hold that certification hearing in the region where the LCP is being adopted. They haven't totally solidified we're obviously not making the November meeting if we're not going to the board until the 4th, and it'll be continued. So it's likely the middle of next year. It could be as late as late summer. The good thing is that there's 2 openings in their schedule where they haven't set a location yet. So we'll be updating everybody as we hear back from Coastal Commission staff of when certification hearings would begin. And then the other part that that Supervisor Hopkins brought up that I really need to emphasize is this is only one part of 3 of the local coastal program. And in some ways, the coastal zoning code and the administrative manual are even more important than the plan. The plan creates a framework, but the actual implementation, the actual details, the standards to which development is held, those live in the administrative manual and in the zoning code. And that's something that we've wrestled with, and we've also wrestled with messaging. Is it's good to have a policy that encompasses a vision and gives kind of a framework and a box, and we'd like to see this happen. But if we make it too specific, we run into the problem as things change, we would then have to revise the LCP in response to learn. The big thing is learning something new about climate change, learning something new about sea level rise. That's such rapidly evolving science, and it's at this point embedded deeply into our LCP, and it would ripple through all of our policies. So we just have our blanket policy is to plan everything around a 7-foot sea level rise, which is considered the worst case scenario by NOAA and their partners. So that's where that number came from. I did want to touch, before I get into vacation rentals, a little bit on two things, on Bodega Marine Lab and on on-site wastewater systems. Is a thing to emphasize here is that the coastal plan regulates the activity of installing the septic system, but it does not regulate the design. So what's great here is, as we update our OTS manual, which is the on-site wastewater treatment system manual, we can begin to allow more innovative solutions. And in the meeting we had just yesterday, seems like it was years ago, is we're also going to take another look at the policy for packaged treatment plants. That's kind of an extreme solution, but we do feel we should have as much flexibility as possible in the LCP to allow as many innovative solutions to wastewater as we can find. And we're really excited that the Marine Lab wants to help us work with us closely as a partner on climate change, and also on analyzing. We have this resource that's a huge group of really great scientists, and they're just sitting there, and we have never exploited that in the past. So we're hoping that they can help us solve things like, what are we going to do with salinization of the wells in Bodega Bay, because that's going to happen as the ocean goes up, and they've got some real smart people that have looked at it a lot, and it's just kind of odd duplication of effort is the district is wrestling with the problem too. So let's get everybody together. So that's and once again, any questions that anybody wants to ask, I'm here to answer those questions. But what I had heard is that doing a review of what action was taken on vacation rentals is really what the MAC wants to hear about tonight. So hopefully, Chair, that's correct.
That is correct.
Okay, excellent.
As you know, the LCP continues running down the track, and I'm sure we'll have you back to talk about that again. But we were specifically interested in hearing more about the vacation rental regulations, because the coastal communities weren't really involved in that as they were developed. And I wanted to give an opportunity to people to ask questions and understand completely what's going on and what will be going on in the next stage.
So the big message that I just need to keep sharing is many of the regulations are not retroactive, that people who already have a valid TOT certificate that are operating, and that's all that's required in the coastal zone, is to be registered for TOT and be paying your TOT. You will be allowed to continue at whatever capacity you're operating at now. So there's not going to be any retroactive application of any of the land use standards, any of the ownership standards. The thing that will change is that the operational standards will be rolled out and eventually apply that have to do with nuisance. That is excessive noise, trash collection, parking, things like that. The vacation rental ordinance borders on as complicated as the LCP, because it has 6 different components to it. There's the coastal zoning code and the inland zoning code, and those are 2 separate amendments. And we work closely with the Coastal Commission in the amendments to the coastal zoning code to essentially, require basic health and safety issues like your septic system has to be working, which, by the way, is not a retroactive standard, but it'd be nice if people did have functioning septic systems if they're running an Airbnb. And we will be expanding that once we adopt the LCP. We included half of a program that is in the LCP update that will eventually create a coastal vacation rental program. But we just kept the first 2 sentences, which supports creating a license program, creating a set of standards. The commission was clear that we needed to have the zoning code specifically say that a license is required, that we couldn't just have a license program and require that people obtain a license. So the LCP amendment and the coastal zoning code amendment both have to go to the Coastal Commission for certification. They've been adopted by the board, and I think is probably correct in thinking that the LCP process might be delayed. So we wanted to keep the vacation rental program running on a track relatively independently, at least for this first phase, which is to get everybody licensed eventually who's operating a vacation rental. The license program does have restrictions on things like ownership. And once again, it is not retroactive. So if you have an LLC or an S Corp and you own 6 houses at Sea Ranch, you can keep operating those until you finally sell the property. So I just, because people don't seem to be hearing that message, but we really want to emphasize it is not retroactive, nor is the capacity standard retroactive. It's only for, so these standards only apply to new vacation rentals. The existing ones can continue to operate. We are going to be requiring property managers. We're still, though, in conversation on how that will work. We're probably going to add a fair amount of flexibility to that. The license program is in Chapter 4 of the Sonoma County Code, which is not something that goes through the Planning Commission. And then the fines are in Chapter 1. So that's where it gets sort of complicated on who gets to review what in this whole process. But the board did send us back to do some revisions on the license program. So what's been adopted so far is inland is a ban on vacation rentals in R1. That does not apply in the coast. That's only inland. The abbreviated vacation rental ordinance inland that now just requires a license to operate, and new standards inland only that would create caps and exclusion areas. Once again, that's not part of what's going on the coast. So, and then an amendment to Chapter 26C, which requires property owners to obtain a zoning permit and a business license going forward. But that requirement to get a zoning permit, once again, is not retroactive. If you have a TOT certificate, you can just get your business license and keep operating. And then the final part is in Chapter 1, we realized that some of our civil penalties were so small that they really aren't a deterrent to people behaving badly. It was $100 a day, and that's really not going to help us much. And so the direction we got from the board on that is to put it to the maximum allowed under state law, and just have it say that, not have it actually have a number. So that's the overview. And for rolling out the licenses, that's going to be a fairly long process, because we want to have a system where everybody isn't renewing in the same month, or even worse, on the same day. So we're likely to have a system where they'll randomly, we have to work out the IT side of this, but your license number will have a month on it, and that's your renewal month. And it's good for at least a year. And it could be good for up to 23 months, depending on what month you get. So it'll be a lot like registering your car, getting your sticker for the car from that point forward. In the coast, you will be paying a fee. Inland pays a fee, but it's a fee that they're already paying inland. We're getting rid of the monitoring fee and turning that into the license fee. And it's currently $224 per year. And I guess the final thing that I just wanted to emphasize is the requirements for the location of the property manager is under discussion, and we recognize the need to have some flexibility in that. So the license ordinance is not yet ready to go, and we have to have that done before we can take the whole package to the Coastal Commission. So that right now is what is keeping us from moving forward with the Coastal Commission. And I hope that, now I'm ready to, if you want to know what things say or what happened, happy to answer questions.
Gary, can you also just give a brief update on the hotline? And will the hotline apply in the coast?
The hotline will apply everywhere once licenses are enforced. So it won't apply in the coast until we have the system going. But there's a 24/7 hotline for people. If there's a problem with how somebody's operating their vacation rental, you can just pick up the phone, call this number. They take care of contacting the property manager, creating a record of what went on, and entering it into a database. So when somebody does come to renew their license, just like any other business, if you have a restaurant or a bar that keeps getting calls for law enforcement, you may say, we're not going to renew your license, or we may revoke your license. But right now we have no way to really document what's going on. So that's a huge step forward, and it's in its final stages of beta testing. We have it set up. It just hasn't gone live at this point. There's actually one of the big things that we're fine tuning in it is so it doesn't give false positives in the coast, so that it can see that your property zoning is CC and nothing happens at that point. However, you should worry if you've got your neighbors irritated enough to call the hotline. Maybe you should have a chat with them. And we're also working on a way to have it so that if your property, that we'll be able to tell if your property is not being leased on a transient basis, that does not generate a complaint.
Oh, good. Okay. So I have one question, and then I'll open this up for questions from the MAC members and then go to the public. So Gary, I'm confused. Will existing vacation rental owners in the coastal region who already have TOT registration be required to get a license?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I see Beth has her hands up.
Yes, thank you, Marty. Gary, again, I want to tell you that I'm just amazed at the work you've done on this, and PRMD as a whole, but honestly, this is such a big project and you've taken it on, and thank you very much for that. Is there a component in the vacation rental ordinance requiring or regarding water and how much water the vacation rentals use?
And once again, in the coast right now, we have to keep it within the parameters. In the Coastal Act, there is a provision that allows local government to regulate nuisance and exempts that from the act. And so we're trying to stay in that box until the LCP is adopted. And then we're going to take, at that point, yes, we would look at water use and whether or not there's a problem with water supply. At this point, because the commission feels very strongly that vacation rentals are a big component, especially in our county. They're a big component of coastal access, especially in counties where there's just not a lot of coastal lodging. I mean, there just aren't that many hotel and motel rooms in the coast. So most visitors are staying at Airbnbs, and that the commission sees as one of the highest priority land uses in the coast. So once we get, it's kind of a convoluted answer. Yes, once we get the LCP adopted and we have the whole program in place, we will be looking at both water and wastewater for vacation rentals.
Thank you. I ask specifically because I've seen so many things occur with vacation rentals where there was a blatant disregard of use, with parents telling their children, go ahead, turn on the hose. It's not going to count against our water use. We had some situations like that again over the Labor Day weekend. So thank you so very much. I appreciate that.
Well, I would add too, as our water element also is going to start to take a bigger look at the overall water budget for the coast. And I think for things like decorative landscaping, I mean, it's not going to affect agriculture, but for decorative landscaping, I think you're going to see some real tightening of regulations.
Good. Thank you so much.
Okay,
think
Wanda.
Wanda?
Yeah. So I probably missed this, and I might know the answer, but are there any limits of how many vacation rentals there can be in a certain population area on the coast?
There is not at this point in time. There will be. That raises an important point with the licensing. Going forward, you can only have one license, and licenses can only be held by a natural person or a trust. They can't be held by LLCs or corporations.
Okay.
So you get the idea there is there's kind of two classes we see. There's the individual who's got their summer home and they want to, to keep it, they've got to rent it out once in a while. But then there's the institutional investors that have 10 houses up at Sea Ranch. And that second class is something that the ordinance is trying to discourage and more encourage. If you've got a second home on the coast, that you can rent it, but you don't get to start buying house after house after house.
Okay. Well, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, any other MAC members? Come on, you must have questions.
It also questions about the LCP too.
Yeah.
I can't seem to.
Brian.
Yes. So I couldn't find the raise hand button right now. So I know I actually spoke to a couple of people about this. I know you mentioned the distance from the vacation rental properties with respect to the property managers. So the last I heard, it was roughly that we're talking about like within half an hour. Is that sort of still generally what you're thinking, or is there some discussion about where that will go?
We're thinking of using time instead of distance. It's going to be a specified time, not a specified number of miles. And, they're required, I guess it would be at the property owner's peril if they weren't able to physically get there, but we're expecting that the problem will be addressed within a half hour. Now, some people could do that remotely, and if you're successful at doing that, then that meets the standard. But if it has to do really with how well you operate your rental. If you're renting to folks that always need a personal touch to get them to tone it down, then you may need a property manager who can physically get there.
Thank you.
Scott?
Gary, since you opened it up to the whole LCP, where do we stand in terms of the permitting process for fuels management in the coastal zone?
We have that is an implementation aspect of the coastal program, because we have the programs in the LCP that support that. That's implementation.
Okay.
And we are, though, concurrently with that, processing kind of programmatic level CDPs, coastal development permits, there's nothing stopping anyone from doing that right now. It's just, we're trying to make the process a little bit more streamlined, but for anybody who wants to do that now, we still have a process to do it.
Thank you.
But following on, Gary, I assume that from what you said in the Board of Supervisors meeting on August 30th, that you're envisioning a more straightforward process that won't take a year to be approved.
Absolutely correct. And in a perfect world, we will, we can't, the thing is there is the Coastal Commission in this loop. So normally we could say we would just exempt certain activities from needing a permit, but that would, but the commission will have to agree with us. But we will, I think it's fairly certain that we'll be looking for exclusion orders for those activities. But once again, that's out of our control, whether or not
But
they
you're-
approve it.
But you're going to try.
We're going to try. Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Any others among the MAC members? Among the public, I see,
Can I just real quick?
yeah, Wanda.
This is kind of a political question. I mean, can you count heads in the Coastal Commission to see where they stand on the issue of fuel reduction along the coast?
What's difficult with them, and I think Supervisor Hopkins, if she remembers back to our meeting with the California Transportation Commission, some of the members are from the southern part of our state and maybe don't see things the same way that we do. So that's a difficulty, is it's a state commission.
Right.
So we always have to remember that it's not Northern California only. But I think, I think staff is very supportive of these sorts of things, and their director, Jack Ainsworth, is very supportive of, he sees it as a resource issue. Above and beyond protecting life safety is these wildfires are destroying habitat. They're burning hotter than natural fires. They're creating a huge amount of environmental damage. And on that basis alone, we need to manage them and do something.
True. I hope they see it that way.
We're
And
gonna do it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I would just add that we have a really great asset, which is that Carol Hart, who
Yeah.
lives in Occidental, is on the Coastal Commission, and I would certainly hope that her fellow commissioners would defer a little bit to her, right, as representing the area, which, I definitely have seen happen in meetings. I mean, she's the kind of person that sometimes people defer to anyway, but she has that local knowledge base, and I think that she will really fight for us and for our LCP.
Great. Good, thanks.
Okay, I see 4 hands in the public. The first is Dottie.
Okay, Dottie, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the permission to talk, and you just need to unmute yourself now.
Hi, I am asked, my question is, in some counties, they, require a business license like you're requiring. But if the host is using Airbnb, they waive the fee, for the business license. San Francisco is an example of this. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, they also have a residency requirement that is kind of tough to meet.
Okay. Thank you.
Paul Mundy.
Yes, I have been a sea rancher since 1968. My family built a home on Breaker Reach, and they rented it out in order to afford to have it. My family passed away, and in 2013, I purchased a home in Sea Ranch. I've been managing and renting my home for 10 years. I feel like I'm being forced to hire a management company to do a job I've done for 10 years and never had a problem. I only rent to couples and a small dog. My house is on a very unique piece of property at Sea Ranch. I am not one of the 5 people that are causing the problem at Sea Ranch, and I'm being punished by it. And I don't appreciate where this is all going, because I'm going to have to put my house on the market, and I'm probably going to sell it, and I'm not going to be living in Sea Ranch. I live there 6 months out of the year, and I live the other 6 months at my cabin in the Sierra. And my house will go up for sale very shortly. I cannot afford to keep it. And I'm done.
Gary, can you speak to that concern?
Well, we have we hear things on both sides of that issue. I mean, not specific to Sea Ranch, but I'm talking about countywide with vacation rentals, and vacation rentals are the sort of use that, it's true, a small percentage of irresponsible operators can create havoc through an entire community. And this is why our Board of Supervisors has directed us to have a uniform system of regulation throughout the county. And that's the purpose of the license program. I'd also add that anybody can become property manager just by passing the certification test, and there's nothing stopping a property owner from self-certifying. We have people that have done that.
Great. Thanks, Gary. I didn't mention, but we are doing a 2-minute timer. Marty, if you confirm that's the right amount of time, unless you don't want a timer for this. I know this isn't really a traditional public comment session.
I would rather leave it without a timer, and
Sure.
if I see somebody abusing the time, I'll ask them to wrap it up.
Okay, that sounds great. And I'm out of habit. Once the person who previously spoke was done, I ended his ability to speak, but I'll go ahead and leave them on, since it seems like we're doing more of a back and forth rather than a traditional public comment, and we can change that if that's not working. Does that sound good? Okay.
Thank you.
Great. So I have Paul Mundy next. Are we ready to go here?
Paul Mundy just spoke.
You just spoke.
Thank you for allowing me to continue to speak, Leo.
Okay.
I really feel very strongly of this. My whole life has been about Sea Ranch, and it means more to me than anything in the world. And I feel like I'm being forced out. I won't be able to afford to have a home there. And I'm going to lose something that means so much to me because of all these rules. I'm not going to be able to manage my own home, my very own home that I've done for 10 years. I'm being forced to have a property manager manage my home. So Leo, that's not fair. And I'm done.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, and Gary did mention this, Paul, I want you to know that you could actually be the property manager for your own home. And that's what Gary was trying to say, is that you can actually go through the certification process yourself. So you don't have to pay someone else. You would sort of go through this process and become a certified property manager and be able to manage as long as you sort of respond in the required amount of time and handle any problems that come up. And sort of
can I interrupt you, Ms. Hopkins? I am not there 6 months out of the year. I'm in the Sierra Nevada. I'm not 30 minutes away. I'm not 30 miles away. So I cannot do what you just said.
But Paul, you just said you've never had a problem in 10 years.
I have never had a problem. I spend 6 months of my life in the Sierra skiing, and I rent out my house at Sea Ranch. And I spend the summer at Sea Ranch when it's nice and cool and it's so hot in the Sierra. But I'm being forced to hire a property manager. So there's someone that's on call. This is so wrong, because I cannot manage my own house. And I am going to put my house up for sale shortly. I'm done. I am so upset, and I'm done.
Oh, can I make a suggestion? This is Beth Pizzoni. There are several vacation rentals by where my home is, and 2 of them have owners that don't live in the area, yet they are very nicely managing their own properties. And how they do that is, part of it is they have asked me, can I call you if there's a problem? And, if I need boots on the ground, will you help me? So maybe you have a neighbor that, if you get a phone call saying there's a problem, maybe you have a neighbor in Sea Ranch that is willing to go and be the boots on the ground for you. Is that
maybe
possible?
that person might be Marty Campbell. She's my friend and neighbor.
Well, Paul, I think we should take this conversation offline, because I appreciate that your concerns, but I think you have a multitude of people here who would be willing to help you. So let's talk.
Okay, but I'm very passionate about this, Marty. It's changing my life. It's changing my lifestyle, and I don't really like it.
Okay.
Okay.
Sun Lover is next.
Hi, thank you. This is Julie. I'm in Bodega Bay. I'm a little bit confused. Well, let me just clarify. So if we're going to be part of the vacation rental program once the LCP is approved. Did I get that right?
No,
No.
it's okay. That I should have done a better job of explaining this. Is we will be doing some changes to it once the LCP is adopted, but the what I call the basic vacation rental program, that is requiring everyone to have a license, that is proceeding independent of the LCP. But also want to be clear that that the regulation for ownership and for how many people you can have, et cetera, is not retroactive. So if you're already operating a vacation rental, you can continue to operate it exactly as you have been.
Okay, so here's my situation. I live here year round and I have a vacation rental across the street. They're not legally registered as a vacation rental because I looked at the county. So in that situation, they're a 2-bedroom place and they typically have 10, 12 people renting there. And so when I kind of made my note to myself that, so are they kind of not grandfathered in to the occupancy part because they aren't even a registered under tot, or?
Well, you've always had a legal obligation to pay your bed tax. So that's independent of the Coastal Act and everything else. So I'd recommend getting your TOT certificate and start paying your tax obligation.
It's not me, it's the place across the street.
Oh, okay.
I
I'm
live
just
here
saying
full-time.
the
Sorry.
recommendation would be get your certificate now and begin paying the taxes that everybody else owes.
So, how will it, once the new plan comes into play, how do you know, how will it be monitored? Like that particular house that I'm mentioning, nobody's going to get a letter. Not every homeowner is going to get a letter in the county about this. So how would a person like that know that there's a new sheriff in town?
Because the only people eligible are those that are registered for transient occupancy tax, and the tax assessor is giving us those names, and nobody else would be eligible. If they don't have a TOT certificate, they're not eligible.
Okay.
Well, I think Julie is asking Gary, how does the county become aware of this unlicensed vacation rental across
Thank
the
you,
street
Marty.
from
That's
her?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a code. Sorry, I was looking at this
Thank
from the
you.
total opposite view.
Yeah.
You should contact code enforcement. They'll take care of it when the 800, when the hotline rolls out, and we're going to do a countywide announcement of it, and this is like next week or so. Then you can just pick up the phone, call the 800 number, and say you think that this vacation rental is operating without a TOT certificate, and they'll contact the tax assessor, because that's very different than violating the vacation rental program. But they'll contact the tax assessor, and the tax assessor will have a chat with them.
Okay, so then once they get their tot, that's a fresh start, kind of, right? So then they should have to follow the rules of, if it's a 2-bedroom, you can't have more than 4 people or whatever the rule is. Would that be accurate? Because they're not grandfathered in because they're not playing.
It depends
Right.
like if tomorrow they went and got their certificate, since we do not yet have everything certified by the Coastal Commission, then they would fall in that category of they can automatically get a license. That said, I'm not sure what the tax assessor's process is for assessing fines for not paying your TOT. That's not a function of Permit Sonoma, but I do imagine there's substantial fines associated with not paying your bed tax.
Okay, and I have one last question on a different topic. So if you have 2 vacation rentals out here, you own 2 and currently you're operating them as 2 and you're paying the TOT, those will be kind of grandfathered in.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Until you sell them. Once you sell them, then it goes away.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark Watson.
Hello. So firstly, thank you to Gary for coming to speak to everyone here, and thank you to Lynda as well for asking for the additional consultation at the Board of Supervisors. I'm a Sea Ranch homeowner, and I'm also involved in the Sea Ranch Hosting Coalition, which is around over 350 Sea Ranch homeowners now who rent out our homes. I have a couple of questions and then a couple of specific points. So the questions is, firstly, when and where can we see the county's submission to the Coastal Commission about this? And second question is, you mentioned that the hotline will be able to tell whether the property is being rented or not. How will they tell whether the property is being rented or not?
Okay, we don't have a packet together yet because the board hasn't yet adopted the license ordinance, and the commission wants a complete package. So and that'll certainly be a public document as soon as the board adopts the final license ordinance to go to the not planning commission, the coastal commission. The issue with whether or not it's rented is the call will come in, and what'll happen is somebody will call the property manager up, and this is assuming that you're there, it's not being rented out. And one of two things will happen. Either the property manager will say, well, Mr. Watson's currently in residence, so it's not a vacation rental, or the property manager doesn't respond, in which case we don't do anything until we have checked with either Airbnb or any of the other contacts we have on whether or not it was rented on that weekend. So it'll take a little while before anything would happen. But if we do discover that it was being rented on the day that the complaint came in, then there will be some action taken. And if we can't verify that, then no action will be taken.
That's great, thank you. That's a question I've been wondering about for a while, and that's a clear answer that makes it very much. It's very good. So a couple of points I wanted to make. We have the 1 license per person restriction. I know it's grandfathered on the coast, but the restriction would come in, and 1 license per person I think is perfectly reasonable idea. But the text of the proposal is much stricter than 1 license per person. A couple would not be allowed 2 licenses if they own property jointly. They would have to kind of mess up their whole financial arrangements and put the properties into single names, and then they could have a license each. It's just the way the restriction is written, and the supervisors didn't really dig into that at the meeting that I listened to earlier. I think the option 3 that staff presented was a much simpler version of 1 license per person and kind of aligns with that. I think the first one would have some unintended consequences. If you imagine someone who has a vacation rental and they inherit another property that has a license with one of the other owners, now suddenly they're in non-compliance. And it's much stricter than 1 license per person. The second point was that certified property managers, I think really need to be able to delegate. I understand the county needs a single contact number. That makes perfect sense. You need a single legally responsible person. You need a responsible person who will answer the phone and hopefully resolve the problem. And you need a responsible person who can go there, who is within the distance, and resolve the problem if the phone doesn't work. But they don't need to be all the same person. You can't have 1 person, individual, available 24/7, 365. I can't hire someone to do that. It's too much. People are ill, people go on vacation. And all of the aims of the regulation can be met. And actually, I think Paul Mundy's problem earlier could probably be well addressed if it was just allowed for 1 certified property manager to delegate to another. Not separate phone numbers, all on the same phone number. Professional organizations could have a on-call rota and so on. And you want professional organizations to take on this responsibility. And I think making it more flexible and easier for people to implement will make it more likely that the problems get resolved, which is really the object of the exercise, not to kind of hold people to complex rules that that are difficult to make practical. So I'm glad you said that there would be more flexibility on the certified property managers, and I hope that will be part of it. I've heard from a lot of people who are upset about the prohibition on unattended pets. I would guess that's to do with barking dogs, and that's perfectly reasonable, but there is a noise and strict noise limits that should deal with barking dogs. Believe it or not, people bring other pets on holiday. It's a free country, so I guess they could bring other pets on holiday. But it seems absurd that they are caught by this prohibition that is, it's just too broad for the problem it's trying to address. And I think the noise limits should be sufficient for that. And then finally, we have a number of architecturally renowned condos in the Sea Ranch, at least one of which is available for people as a short-term rental. And whilst I know it would be grandfathered, the prohibition on short-term rentals in condos, just a blanket prohibition, may deny the public access to those properties. And people come from all over the world to see Condominium 1 at the Sea Ranch. And so my suggestion would be just to give the Planning Commission a little out there that if a property is not one that is likely to be affordable housing, and if there's a good reason that short-term rentals could be allowed in condos with Planning Commission permission. Sorry, I probably went on more than 2 minutes there, so apologies for that. But thank you for all of your time.
Well, do remember, as I keep emphasizing, the requirements are not retroactive. If a condominium is currently being rented, it can continue to be rented. Same thing as if you inherit a property that already has a vacation rental license, we do not consider that to be a transfer of property. The transfer of property, and this is an internal policy and procedure, it's not codified, but we see as if there is a documentary transfer tax associated with it, that's seen as a property transfer. So if you refinance, if you change your relationship with your partner in the property, if you inherit the property, those things do not constitute a change in ownership. So the permit would continue to be valid until you sold that property to another party.
Yeah, the problem I was referring to with the ownership restriction is that as it's written, a single person can only have an ownership interest in one licensed property. So if I have an interest in a licensed property of my own, and then I inherit another property, or at least I inherit 5% of another property that is also licensed, I'm now in non-compliance because I have an ownership interest both in my own property, my original one, and the one I just inherited. Likewise, a couple that have two joint properties, they can't have joint licenses because they both have an interest in both properties. And it serves no purpose to make them, go to their lawyers and change their properties into single ownership just to dance around the county restrictions. And there's good reasons that people hold property in joint ownership, and it serves no purpose to deny them that.
That would be a policy decision for the board, but we presented the options there, and once again I want to emphasize in that first scenario that you presented, both properties had permits and they'd be allowed to continue their permits, that the ownership would have no relevancy there.
Okay. Mark, I'm taking you offline now. Keep your eyes open, Mark, for the dates when it will go back to the Board of Supervisors. Rebecca Hockmeyer.
Hi there. Rebecca Hackmeyer. We are residents of Petaluma, and we have a vacation rental second home up in the Sea Ranch. And so I don't have any wonderful suggestions like Mark did. That's a hard act to follow, but I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. So we have our TOT, and so the next steps for us to be in compliance are going to be to take the property manager certification, which I'm finding on Permit Sonoma. And then also, once we have that certification in hand, then we need to apply for the license. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And is the license already live on the Permit Sonoma website, or is that not yet available?
No, the board has not adopted the license ordinance yet. It's still being refined because of, for example, the very good points that Mark brought up. There's a few changes that are going on, so we're bringing that back for another hearing.
Got it. And so we will apply for the property manager certification, even though we live in Petaluma, so long as we are a 24-hour contact. And if we get, contacted, we have a way to sort of resolve the problem or take next steps within 30 minutes. Is that accurate?
That is what's being proposed. That's one of the options, one of the policy options that we have. And I do want to emphasize is if folks are doing this remotely and they're not successful, there's a good chance you'll lose your license.
And not successful would be if one of our renters complains that the hot tub didn't heat up quickly enough in the middle of the night and we weren't able to get the hot tub technician out? Or is it if there is a barking dog and someone else complains that something's going on at our property?
It's if you're annoying your neighbors, if you're if there's a nuisance being created and you're not able to stop the nuisance from being created, or if there's trash on the street, or if cars are parked illegally, those sorts of things. If you can't resolve those in a timely manner, that's what could cause you to lose your license.
Got it. But if we have a team in place, we have our handy person and our hot tub tech and our amazing cleaning team.
We don't care about your hot tub. We just
don't care how many stars you have or what your Yelp says.
We just want the neighbors to be happy. And that's, literally the only reason that we're creating this is because not everybody is a good neighbor. And we just want to make sure that everybody has, in a perfect world, nobody would know there's a vacation rental next door. They would be run that well.
Right.
And that's what we're looking for.
One thing I do want to mention is we discussed pretty extensively at the board meeting, wanting to sort of have common sense as we look at things like a license revocation, right? It's not going to be, oh my goodness, there was one dog barking one time, your entire operation is shut down. But we do see folks who unfortunately fail to respond on a regular basis and actually sometimes break the rules on purpose. For instance, advertising in excess of the number of folks they're allowed to have permitted on their property, for example. And so those are the instances where we really want to be able to leverage, those fines that Gary discussed earlier, as well as the ability to revoke a business license. So we are, and at the board, we did actually ask for sort of additional clarification that staff can bring back to kind of create more of a framework for enforcement so that both the neighbors and also the vacation rental owners kind of know what to expect. And Gary, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I forgot to go over that. With the whole point of doing a license program is that we have all those tools. When it was a zoning permit, our only tool is revocation. Now we can look at it and really give a proportional response to what happened. It's like, you made one mistake. It's like, okay, we're going to give you $100 fine. Don't do it again. You did something really egregious. Well, we could either take away your license or just suspend it for a period of time. And actually license suspensions can be a pretty powerful tool, because if you've got bookings, you've got to cancel those bookings. If you did something that was bad enough to make us suspend your license for, say, 30 days in the middle of the summer. But so it gives us a wide range of tools that hopefully are now in sync with the level of whatever violation of standards happened, rather than just all we had was a sledgehammer in our current program.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, the skipper.
Hello. How was everyone?
Good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I've been listening with great interest for the entire meeting. And in brief, I have a family home on the Russian River in Villa Grande. It was a long-term rental, but my family, we'd like to do a vacation rental. And I know this meeting was about vacation rentals. And I have as the owner, I don't have any clue about most of the stuff you guys said, but is there a place in the future where you anticipate, in the next year, 9 months, a year and a half, where people like me can apply to have a vacation rental on the Russian River, or is that done? No more?
Supervisor Hopkins. It's
Thanks,
well,
Gary.
I'll help too.
No, it's- yeah, I
We'll
can
tag
start,
team
yeah.
this one.
Yeah, so this is a really tough question to answer, but I really appreciate you bringing it up. So we have two separate processes going forward, right? We've got the coastal zone process, wherein we don't have an ability to sort of limit the concentration. We're moving forward with this business license program, that will be moving on to the Coastal Commission. And then inland right now, we do have a temporary moratorium, as well as the Board of Supervisors agreed to an R1 ban. However, I fought pretty hard to actually create, in addition to exclusion zones, where we could actually extend a ban beyond just R1 zoning, to actually also create inclusion zones, because in West County, the sort of zoning doesn't really match up with where traditional vacation rental neighborhoods have existed. And this is particularly true actually in Villa Grande and Monterey and Guerneville, a lot of the riverfront areas. And so we are actually going to be going through a process, neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community, to look at rezoning and allowing potentially certain concentrations of vacation rentals, potentially within R1, but also looking at potentially sort of expanding bans or caps in other areas. So I wish that I had a straightforward answer for you, and I don't, but I would encourage you to participate in the process, because I've actually talked to some folks who are with the vacation rental industry and some folks who are in the concerned neighbor camp. And actually there is some commonality in the Lower Russian River. They're like, oh yeah, no, this is where vacation rentals make sense to exist. And over here, this has really been workforce housing for decades now. We don't want to see vacation rentals sort of taking it over. So I would encourage you to engage in that process. And Gary, if there's anything that I missed, basically Gary is just working 24/7 on either the local coastal plan or vacation rental, I think, until he retires. But what did I miss, Gary?
Russian River MAC. Stay tuned to the Russian River MAC, because they are your equivalent of the coastal MAC, and we certainly will be doing similar outreach with the Russian River MAC.
So next month, similar meeting.
All right. I mean, I'm aware of the moratorium and it's in place until further notice is made. Right?
It expires, Gary, is it?
March 23rd.
There you go.
A day that'll live in infamy.
So you have a line at the purpose.
Yeah, no, we've got to get this stuff dealt with by March 23rd.
Yeah. So
Okay,
we hope
yeah,
to have an answer for you for that, right? And maybe it's 5% cap area, or a 10% cap area, or a 15, or maybe it is a ban, or maybe it's, so it depends. It depends on your zoning and your location.
Okay, sounds reasonable. I'll stay tuned. Thank you for your time.
On staying tuned, I might have spaced out, but it is also going to go back to the Planning Commission. So
correct.
My understanding from talking to, Gary and your colleagues, it sounds like there's going to be that outreach, and then it'll go to the Planning Commission, and then the Planning Commission will take action, then it'll go to the board. So there will be a significant number of times where people can weigh in and share information.
Yeah, and if you send us an email, we can put you on the email newsletter notification list so that you're aware of any meetings coming up on the subject, because we're going to be tracking this really closely.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd appreciate it very much.
And we really need the neighbors' help in defining these areas. I mean, I'm a West County resident. I think I could draw a map of some of the communities, but I think it'd be presumptive of me to say where the bound. I mean, Villa Grande is an easy one to draw.
Right.
But I don't know if I'd be able to do like Forestville, and is Hacienda really part of Forestville type of question. But I want to talk to the people in that neighborhood, have them tell us where those boundaries are.
Yeah, we have a really good group out there called the Friends of Villa Grande, and there's a consensus there. They kind of asked me to sit in today on their behalf, so I'll relay that back to them. And I know that, there's very keen interest in that little village that we all are a part of. So thanks again. I appreciate it. And you've got my email to add me to the list. Is that what you're saying, Miss?
Just if you send us an email, you can email Lynda.hopkins@sonoma-county.org, or District 5, spelled out district with the number 5 sonoma-county.org, and then we can add you to the newsletter.
I'm writing it down.
and-
Thank you.
And Mr. Skipper, are you aware that there's another MAC called the Lower Russian River MAC? And you should be looking at their agenda too, because they are likely to have this same issue on one of their agendas.
Okay. Thanks again, everybody. Appreciate you.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Okay, David Workman.
David, the permission is on, but you still need to hit the unmute button on your end.
Requires points, right? I know. Yeah, so the property management situation up at Sea Ranch is a big concern. As you already know, we've got rules and regulations that pretty much dovetail what you're going to submit to the Coastal Commission. We've got security that drives around. And there's just not a lot of resources to have somebody available, one person available that kind of time frame. So I would hope we'd be able to form a company that would go out and do what needs to be done, and it wouldn't be an individual. And also have Sea Ranch Security having that ability, because they're going to show up. They don't know if it's a renter or a homeowner that's got too many cars out front, and they'll be most likely be the first individual there. And it would be nice to have them to settle it, which they're very good at. They've been doing it for a very long time. So I have concern that we're trying to make this a little too tight. The objective is to shut down the noise or whatever the problem is quickly. And I think at Sea Ranch we've been doing it for a while, because we've had these types of rules in play for a while too. And just on the dog thing, that you don't want the dog to go to the restaurant. You don't want the dog to go certain areas. You don't want the dog in a car. So if you require a renter to stay connected to the dog, that puts the dog in jeopardy, in my opinion. Very few dogs bark when they're left in the house. So that's really what we were looking at with the dog thing. So that's what I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary Lawler.
Hi, thanks. I have a vacation rental home in Salmon Creek, and a lot of my questions have been answered. I probably should have lowered my hand, but I did want two things for clarification. The operational standards, I understand, are still being developed. Will we have a chance to review those or to comment on them? I missed that.
They will be heard by the Board of Supervisors, so it'll be a regularly noticed public meeting. The standards are already, I'd say 90% of what's in the current license program represents the standards. I mean, that's a good starting point. It's just looking at what's already proposed. There are some tweaks happening, but most of the tweaks are about administration, not about what the standards actually are. I don't think the board, correct me if I'm wrong, is going to change things like the noise standards and whatnot. It's more about the nuts and bolts and how we administer it.
Okay. And those again are visible on the county website?
Correct.
Okay. And I just, after having attended several of the meetings before for the, when the permit committee was presenting, I really appreciate the civility and the give and take in this communication. It's unique in my experience in talking about vacation rentals. So thank you very much. I also echo some of the concerns about the management program. I understand it'll be grandfathered in, but it is the challenge of how ultimately the determination of the distance is being set. You know, I heard initially it was going to be miles. And now if it is 30 minutes response by a phone, that's not a problem. But if it is a mileage issue or driving time, it becomes problematic. I'm very fortunate not to have an issue with my neighbors. I've been doing this for 10 years and feel easily compliant with the updated regulations. But I do hope that that leniency or that flexibility is something that will be part of the plan. So I guess
Thank
that's
you.
it. But again, thank you very much for hearing people and for the potential for that flexibility. It will make a big difference.
Thank you.
Marty, if I may, I actually have a hard 7 o'clock cutoff. So I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Okay. If we don't get through everybody, could you come back at a subsequent meeting?
Of
and
course.
talk about what that mysterious sentence in the LCP means that you're going to consider with the Coastal Commission after the LCP is approved?
Oh, you mean the last half of the program?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's published. That's public knowledge. It's
Well, it's not knowledge to this public, to this person in the public.
okay. Yeah, because
So we
it's in
can-
all the board materials as well. It is a verbatim the program that is proposed for the LCP. It's essentially we're adopting the first half of it, and then the rest of it will be adopted when the LCP is adopted. But that program has been in the LCP for over a year at this point.
Okay, I'll look harder and
I'll email it to you. I'm happy
good.
if anybody needs any materials like that, send me an email. I can just send you the excerpts so you don't have to read all 833 pages of the
Okay,
LCP.
well, send it to me.
Okay.
So I think this is a service to the public to let people ask you questions. So Dan Gudino.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
That's better.
Much better. Okay. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to make public comment. My name is Dan Godino. I am a homeowner and a certified professional vacation rental manager operator with Wine Country Getaway. I manage several properties in Sonoma County and the Bay Area. I fully support and welcome a well thought out regulatory package. One request that I ask from you to consider is that you allow an employee of my management company that can serve as a secondary point of contact. We may have multiple complaint calls to answer, and I can be at different places within the allocated complaint resolution time. Also, when I'm on vacation for a week or two at a time, I will not be able to attend any complaint calls. Also, I hope you are open to getting recommendations from the professional vacation rental community in crafting a comprehensive regulatory package that is well thought out and all mutual interests are balanced. For those interested in connecting with me, you may find me at winecountrygetaway.info. Again, winecountrygetaway.info. I thank you for allowing me to speak, and I yield my time back.
Thank you. Elizabeth Watson.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Watson. I'm a part-time resident of the Sea Ranch and a member of the Sea Ranch Board of Directors. I also want to thank everyone for the civil nature of this discussion. It's refreshing and much appreciated. I think my questions or comments relate probably to the administrative phase of this project, but to follow up on Mark Watson's comments, I'd like to ask that when you look at individual owners and trusts, that when you're looking at couples and shared ownership, that also be applied to trust, because many Sea Ranch owners own their homes in trust. And secondly, that we also take some of the issues around the lack of local resources into account when we look at property management requirements for the Sea Ranch and similar areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa Beatty. Lisa, I think you need to unmute.
You might have hit it twice. It looked like you unmuted and then remuted.
Hi there. No, I was multi.
Sorry, Lisa, that was my fault. I just hit the mute button again. Will you unmute again?
Hello.
Sorry, Lisa, that was my fault. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. I was multitasking not well. I apologize if this has been asked and answered, but I guess I'm still a little unclear. A question maybe for Gary. Let's take, for example, unincorporated West County, Bodega Bay area. There's been a lot of talk back and forth about retroactivity for vacation rentals. So is there a date already established for unincorporated West Sonoma County, or is the date pending Coastal Commission approval?
The date is pending certification by the Coastal Commission.
Okay, so for if I own, say, an LLC and I was interested in a business venture, I could then buy up several properties, applying my LLC and be grandfathered in because the date is not yet set in stone. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Thank you.
Okay, C. Higgins.
Good evening, everyone. And yes, I also thank you for this wonderful opportunity to dialogue. And Gary, I'm glad to get you before the 7 o'clock mark. I unfortunately missed part of your presentation, and I had a little bit of confusion about retroactivity as far as performance standards, because it seems to me that the licensure portion of this that's going to coincide with the rest of the county will come through an LCP amendment currently. And then once the program is approved, which isn't really yet even the ordinance portion, which has to go through a whole public process. So it seems quite a ways out. Are you saying that anyone who has, currently has a vacation rental paying TOT, that once we get to the point of certification, they do not have to abide by the performance standards, that won't be retroactive? So that, for example, that woman who was reporting about a 2-bedroom having 12 people, that the performance standards will not apply to that person if they already have their TOT.
Occupancy would not be retroactive, and the ordinance has been adopted by the Board of Supervisors. It is the license ordinance that hasn't been adopted. So we have a land use ordinance and a license ordinance. License ordinance was adopted. The license ordinance is coming back.
But as that relates to the performance standards that are being decided through the local coastal program, are you saying that those performance standards will not be retroactive? Meaning that
occupancy will not be retroactive.
And if I can just jump in and do a little explanation, this actually had a lot to do with attorneys and what would sort of constitute taking of pre-established rights. And, we certainly from the board pushed hard to get as many of those performance standards to be retroactive as possible to really address the nuisance concerns of the neighbors. But there were some things that kind of legally needed to be excluded. That said, there may be other opportunities if, for instance, an excess concentration of way too many guests in bedrooms is causing septic impacts or sort of water drawdown impacts. And I think that we've done a pretty robust job in the water element of the LCP, for instance, that there might be other ways of kind of filing a complaint or a concern about a particular property. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents. And Gary, is that pretty accurate?
That's absolutely true. I mean, and we are limited by kind of a line that legal counsel provided to us.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarity, and that is unfortunate that those performance standards would not be generalized, but I understand the limitations that you are operating under. My second question is, very different here at the coast as far as density and exclusion zones. But first, to state very clearly that density restrictions and exclusion zones have been certified by the Coastal Commission in other parts of the California coast. We are not prohibited from trying to do that here. But at the same time, we are way beyond any sort of the inland densities. For example, the 15 homes around me, only 3 are full-time residents. The rest of those homes are vacation rentals. So we're way beyond 50. We're almost at 75. And I'm just, curious, both for Gary and for Supervisor Hopkins, as we look at finally properly getting a baseline and documenting through the licensing program, the actual number of vacation rentals that we have here on the coast, which I don't think we have a clear idea of now. Will there be opportunity to reconsider and look at the idea of density, maybe on a different scale? But we have to also remember that the Coastal Act is about preserving community character, preserving coastal resources, and preserving the coast as we know it. And if we do not get a proper baseline, and if we don't address that imbalance in the future, we lose our community character, which is pretty important too. And we also lose a lot of housing opportunity out here on the coast, which is equally as important. And building more homes isn't necessarily always the solution, right? Because that comes with carrying capacity issues as well. So I am just hoping that, saying that it no longer be continued to be said that you cannot, through a coastal plan, address density in vacation rentals or exclusion zones, because those have been certified. Those are allowed.
And those would be supported by the program that's in the LCP. But we're only amending the first part of it in this initial phase. The part of the reason we're doing that too is the commission staff has the opportunity to do their the Coastal Commission staff. Ross keeps saying, make sure you say Coastal Commission, not Planning Commission. They're equivalent of putting something on consent for the Board of Supervisors. So our goal right now, and I think we've achieved it, is having this be a de minimis change to our local coastal program, the overall program. And so it will be expedited approval. And then when we get the LCP in place, then we will take the next step at comprehensive revision of the regulations. We also know exactly how many TOT certificates we have. The thing is same as inland, we can't track people who are cheating on their property taxes. We can only count the number of people who are abiding by the regulations and paying their taxes. But we know how many certificates there are. The tax assessor actually shares that in real time with us. I mean, we can continuously see where each certificate is located.
Okay, thank you.
And it's worth noting that if they're cheating on their taxes, they won't be grandfathered in, right?
Correct.
Gary?
Yeah,
So
they don't exist in our. If you don't have a certificate that once things are certified, your vacation rental doesn't exist.
And see, I just want to say I'm very interested in having the conversation around concentration. And I don't live on the coast, but I have watched in real time as the lower Russian River neighborhoods shifted. And I had a lengthy conversation with Janet Moore, very concerned and alarmed about just the loss of local residents, loss of kids in schools, the same things that we are hearing again inland, and why I kind of fought so hard to look at caps to really bring this back before the board. So not right now, but it is something that we will address, and I'm committed to working with you and the entire coastal community on it. And I want to just note that it's 6:59, and I know Gary has to jump off, but I will still be here to listen. I am not Gary, I'm not as knowledgeable, but I can certainly sort of still collect the feedback and then share it with him subsequently via email.
Okay,
thank
you, Gary.
Okay, sorry, I've got to go.
And
but
when you
I think
send me
it's
the
Ross-
link to that part of the LCP, I'll share it with all the other MAC members.
I'm going to share you. I'll just send the whole text as a text document, so you've got it verbatim.
Okay.
It's
great.
small. It'll fit in the body of an email.
Oh, okay.
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 And bye, Gary. I was
fun.
going to say I also have to go, but we would be happy to answer any of the additional questions that you have. If you'd like to email Gary or I, or both of us, we'd be happy to respond. If we can make it back to another meeting with the Coast MAC, we'd be happy to. So thank you for
and the
having
key
us.
thing there is invite us with a fair amount of advance notices. You might suspect my schedule's kind of full. And, I apologize for the last time the Coastal MAC wanted me to speak, there wasn't room. I mean, it was too late and I couldn't clear space in my calendar. So
Understood.
enough advance notice. Happy to be here. Love being here. It's great.
Okay, thank you.
See ya.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you,
Um,
Ross.
Marty, before going on to the next speaker, Alex C, I think we just lost him, but he had asked a question about what is the rationale as to why R1 is not banned on the coast? And based on what we were just hearing, I believe the reason is just that would be in any sort of land use or density restriction or that kind of thing would happen in a future phase, not in the current law, where he was just describing how we were trying to move through essentially things that would be the equivalent of on consent and sort of reflecting those existing practices. Did that make sense? Sorry. I think the answer for why R1 was not banned on the coast is that the board wasn't making that type of land use change, and that it would be included in any sort of future conversation along with the issues that C was just raising.
Well, I may be the only one here, but I don't know what R1 means.
It is a residential zoning that is, actually, Lynda, do you know exactly what R1 is? Because I don't want to misspeak on that.
It's so what it's sort of supposed to be, and sometimes it actually varies because again, West County is often unusual, is sort of the city-like, dense residential areas. So it's not sort of the multifamily zoning, but it is, kind of where you would expect to have water services and sewer services and relatively dense neighborhoods.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Julie, AKA a sun lover, I'm going to skip over you and take the next person because you've already spoken, and then I'll come back to you. Donna Martinez.
Hi, thank you so very much for taking my call here. I am very concerned about the selection of terminology and the expectation that one singular person is to be on call every day, all days, every moment of each and every day of all years with no time off. The traditional definition of a property manager implies a specific licensed real estate agent with a knowledge of the law, not to be confused with dear and wonderful Marty Campbell or any other wonderful neighbor to any owner in the Sea Ranch or other locations similar along the coast, to be available every day, all day, every day, hour and minute of every year to respond here and there and everywhere to any complaint. It is my suggestion and strong recommendation that the Sonoma County review the model of service that is provided by the state of Colorado, especially within Summit, Colorado. They have established a couple of years ago the concept of the responsible agent. Within that terminology, within that law, and as a newly minted cottage industry, the responsible agent is defined as the responsible agent or such persons employed or designee shall be available 24 hours per day, 7 days per week to respond as defined in the administrative rules and regulations to any complaint filed with or through the town, Summit, or a website provided by the town for such purpose about the operation or condition of the licensee's accommodation unit. Such responsible agent shall respond to a complaint, they state, within 60 minutes of receiving notice for such complaint. I encourage Sonoma County to consider this as their business model. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
And
So,
I don't know if I could provide a little clarity. I don't think there's any requirement that it just be one person who is sort of available 24/7. It's really that there is a contact point. So a
No.
phone number, it could theoretically be a shared phone number that is forwarded, just that someone is available to respond in the event, the unfortunate event that someone is breaking the rules, that they would be able to respond in a timely fashion. And I really appreciate the problem solving, it was expressed earlier about bands of sea ranchers, coming together to problem solve this together. So I would definitely encourage some of that.
That's bullshit.
okay, thank you. Mark Watson.
Thank you for allowing me to speak again, just briefly in response to the points, Lynda, you just made. It's just not what the language says. The language is in the ordinance is clear that there's a single person and it's the same person that has to do all the different jobs. And it would take like a one-word change to address all of this concern that you're hearing here, which I've been asking for a year or more now, and just on deaf ears. So I'm really pleased to hear you describe that as what you want to achieve. But the language needs to change to achieve it, and I really hope that that will be able to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. So does anybody on the MAC itself have another question about this topic? Okay, thank you, everybody. Moving on in the agenda, the next item is that we're coming to a close for this year. We have one more MAC meeting in this calendar year, and some people's terms are ending. And Leo is going to tell us about the selection process to fill the open positions.
Thanks so much. So we do have the information posted on our website, and we did also send mailers to the residents of the areas that are covered. I'm going to go ahead and let you know that the application period is currently open, and it is going to close at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, October 12th for 2-year terms for representatives or alternates in 4 key areas that have openings for the Sonoma County Coast MAC. And so for Bodega Valley Ford, there's a representative slot. So the incumbent right now is Beth Brazzoni, and then there's an alternate spot where the incumbent is Che Casul. So those are available for people to apply if they wish to compete for those positions. For Sea Ranch in Annapolis, there's currently a representative position. So the incumbent's Paul Plakos, and he is up for re-election. And then there's a vacant alternate seat as somebody had to resign earlier this year. So that is available for Sea Ranch and Annapolis, which is one area. For Fort Ross, there's a position of representative. The incumbent is Wanda Swenson, and the alternate position is also available for this process, and the incumbent is Carolyn Madden. And then finally for Bodega Bay, the representative slot is up, and it is the current position that Brian Lubitz is in. So the elections will be held for these seats that have multiple applications. If there aren't multiple applications, then there wouldn't be an election process if there were only one person who was interested in one slot. And so this is all subject to meeting eligibility requirements. And then the representatives and alternates actually get formally appointed by the Board of Supervisors and would be seated for the first MAC meeting in 2023. So I'll go ahead and put a link in the chat for the main information page about the coastal MAC, and you can see a link to, for example, a map of the different sub areas, and if you have other information that you want to see there. And then we also do have the link for the application form, and so you can apply through that county form to be the representative for one of those sub areas that have openings. As a side note, that form is also the same form to apply if you want to serve on other county commissions and want to be considered by the 5th District for that. So if you're really eager to get involved in government and you're not in one of those areas, you could also look at some of those other roles.
Thank you, Leo.
You're welcome.
Beth?
Yes, Leo, I'm a little confused and please bear with me. I'm sure there's a reason for this that I don't
Sure.
understand. I thought that the appointment was a 2-year appointment.
It should be a 2-year appointment. Was that incorrect regarding your appointment?
I believe so, unless time has flown by, which is entirely possible.
So, Beth, sorry, you mind
No,
if I
that's okay.
interject? So, I think I'm in a similar position as you because both you and I came into, you came into Che's position and I came into, I think, Kathy's position. So our terms are mid-term. So we're filling out an unexpired term, and then now we have another term coming up.
Thank you. That makes sense. Thank you very much, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Wanda?
Yeah, and I actually think Carolyn Madden, I believe she just started this year. So I think she should not be up yet. I think I am.
Wanda, you are up as the rep. I have Caroline also listed, but I will make sure to reconfirm with Elise and with Debbie. So
Okay, great. Thank you.
yeah, we'll make sure that that information is fully accurate so that we're not considering someone incorrectly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Wanda. Okay.
Scott's quickly raising his hand.
I'm sorry.
Is it right to assume that the first set of there were some 3-year and some 2-year, and do the alternates go parallel with that schedule of the rep? In other words, an alternate would follow the same timeline as a rep. I think.
I think so, but I'd want to be sure. And that reminds me that Marty did want us to share how we would be communicating any sort of information related to this in terms of elections. And so why don't we make sure to double check everything, and we'll share that information through a newsletter or on Lynda's Facebook page. Those are different options for making sure we let people know any of those details. So we'll the link that I had already shared is the main page for the Coast MAC, and so that would certainly be a logical place where we can re-clarify all of that information. I have kind of the materials that were prepared for me, and we can put that material online once we confirm it.
Thank you. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Leo. Are there any other questions from the MAC members about this? Okay. Wanda?
Okay. What kind of response have you received from sending out the mailers, those postcards? Any?
We did get one very angry person who wanted to be unsubscribed from our list, but I think that there has been some interest, and I think we've seen some additional people sign up for newsletters. I wish that Elise were here to speak to it, but she wasn't available tonight. But I do think that overall it was a positive thing.
Beth and then Scott. And keep in mind that we're not done yet with the agenda. Beth and then Scott.
Thank you. I just quickly want to address at the last Board of Supervisors meeting that, not this previous one, but the one before, there was a gentleman, and his name eludes me right now, but he was with Truth and Tourism, and he took issue with the MACs as a whole, not just the CMACs, but the MACs as a whole, that he did not believe they should be people that live in the area full time. And he felt that we were all appointed by our supervisor to be in lockstep and like-minded. And that's not true. Many of us have been elected. Some of us have been appointed. But one of the things that's so wonderful about the CMACs is that we don't all think exactly alike, and we can be respectful and kind to one another and bring different perspectives into the discussion. And I think it's a wonderful organization, and I very much look forward to see who else might be applying for these positions.
Okay, Scott, and then Lynda.
Yeah, along those lines, I was going to say for the public that it's a nomination process, but it's open to everybody, and the communities make recommendations as to whom they wish, and then they are appointed. But it has worked very well, and there is no back room. Again, it's worked very well.
Thank you. And Lynda.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the only instances in which folks have been appointed without having a selection process, and I use the word selection because even though it's really intended to be an election, the attorneys won't let us say election because it's not going through the registrar of voters. Anyway, the only point at which community members did not cast ballots to select their own representative was when communities either came together and just sort of selected their own without actually a ballot process, more of sort of a community meeting process, or when there was no competition. So we have appointed folks because there was simply no one else who came forward, to challenge someone to create more of a selection process. But I am absolutely committed, and we are absolutely committed in the 5th District team to ensuring that these are really folks selected by the communities. I have zero interest in cherry picking folks who agree with me. And I think especially if you go to Lower Russian River MAC, you'll find that there are lots of disagreements, and a lot of folks actually very much disagreed with the vacation rental ordinance, for instance. So this is really truly intended to represent the community, and I would say to whoever has critiques of it, throw your hat in the ring, join the democratic process and be part of it and create change that way. So, and I just want to say I respect so much everyone who has stepped forward at the MAC, and kind of a moment to thank you all for your service as we start to talk about the next terms and the expiring terms. Has been a wonderful process, and you all have really stepped up.
Thank you. Does anybody in the public have a question about this? I see that there's still 2 hands raised. And I assume that the hands are raised to talk about short-term rentals. And we unfortunately have passed that part of the agenda.
So, see, Jim and Donna, if your hands are up for short-term rentals, if you don't mind, please lowering them. Thank you. And so we have Donna's hand up now.
Donna, do you have a comment about the membership selection process of the MAC?
Donna, I've turned on your ability to talk. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I do. For those of us who are somewhat of a rare unicorn type, who have property within the coastal MAC area, and who are also residents elsewhere in the Sonoma County, are we regulated specifically based on our area of residence or our area of interest? In this case, my area of interest would be the Sea Ranch. However, I am not a resident of that community. I am a resident of Windsor. How does that work?
Isn't it where you
when
vote?
you say regulated, do you mean sort of would eligible?
Selected eligibility.
Okay. Yeah, it would be
Whatever
your
that
pri-
means. I really don't know. I'm learning as I go here.
Yeah, it would be your primary residence and sort of which is where you vote, to Scott's point. Like where do you vote for a school board, or a local election?
Thank
So
you.
even though we have a dual, and I'm not the only person in this area that has an interest in one specific region, but are voting members of the county in another region. So is there any means of crossing borders within the same border?
If I could say, when we set this up, it's not just, it's an area that we want you to be familiar with, and thus your primary residence, and where you vote would suggest your primary residence. However, we do have ad hoc committees, and they are open for people like yourself to participate in, especially if you're interested in a narrower topic. So there are opportunities.
Thank you, Scott. That's a good addition. But Donna, I think you have to be a resident of the area to serve on the MAC. And I understand you love the Sea Ranch. And you're committed to the region, and maybe you should keep an eye out for ad hoc committees. And I believe this is the first MAC meeting you attended, so attend some more and you'll get a sense of what goes on here.
Thank you, Marty. Actually, I've attended quite a few of them. While I may not have jumped in on the conversation, I have been keeping an eye and monitoring not only Sea Ranch, but the lower river and all parts in between.
Okay.
But the ad hoc committee idea is a good one. Thank you. I appreciate that option as well.
Okay, thank you.
May also.
Thank you. And quickly moving on to the council member reports. I prepared a chair's report, and we've gone on so long that I'm gonna shorten it up. I thank you all for coming tonight, and I would like to point out that Elise is not with us tonight because she's undergoing treatment for her cancer. And I'd like to ask that you join me in sending our best virtual wishes to Elise as she goes through this difficult time. And we all hope that she comes through this with her cancer beaten back. As Supervisor Hopkins mentioned, Brian and I were invited to attend a meeting that Supervisor Hopkins had yesterday with the staff people of Permit Sonoma working on the local coastal plan, where she was exploring her 50 sticky notes on her paper copy of the LCP, and she invited several stakeholders to come and speak with her, and I don't know who all those were, but Brian and I were able to listen to the Save Our Sonoma Coast people who came and talked about environmental issues and present some issues that I developed as critical to the MAC. And I wrote those up. I'm gonna send that written text to all of the MAC members. The 5 areas that we covered were housing issues on the coast, and along with that, LCP issues about sewage that affect the ability to build housing along the coast, trade-offs in the use of beaches by human beings versus marine mammals and birds, a request that coastal development permits no longer be required for fire hardening vegetation management around homes, the removal of the mention of specific commercial businesses in Objective CLU 5.1, These suggestions for expansion of these businesses date from 1980 and are often no longer relevant, and they serve no purpose. And we pointed out that there was plenty of regulation of expansions of businesses, and this serves no purpose. We also raise an ongoing concern about ESHAs and how they would be applied to development of unbuilt lots, and confirmed with Gary, who was there yesterday, that the practical application of the ESHA policy would be part of the development of the administrative manual, which is a separate process, which will begin after Coastal Commission approval of the LCP. Issues coming up on the Board of Supervisors calendar in coming weeks are September 27th, a building codes update, October 4th, the continuation of LCP discussion and a well ordinance, and October 25th, broadband recommendations. And I'd like to mention that last Saturday on September 10th, the North Sonoma Coast Fire Protection District sponsored a vegetation management community meeting in Annapolis. Fire Chief Bonnie Playcoast led the meeting, and Judy Rosales of the Coast Collaborative, who recently met with the MAC to talk about her organization, was there, along with Forester Matt Green, whom she frequently works with, and Marshall Turbeville, the battalion chief of our area for CAL FIRE. And it was well attended. About 20 residents were there. It was fabulous. And I was incredibly impressed with Judy Rosales and her organization, and the way she made it clear how the community could band together to plan and do this work in common, and the resources that Judy's organization has for helping communities find relevant grants to assist with the cost. And I would encourage everybody who would be interested in doing a meeting like that in their area to get in touch with me, and I can tell you more about how it went, but I was incredibly impressed. So the water ad hoc had no report for this meeting, but Paul Plakos and Brian Lubitz are going to work on water issues and make that the focus of the November MAC meeting. The land use standing committee didn't have any meeting since the last meeting, and the road ad hoc has not met.
So Marty, real quick.
Yeah.
We did mention in the there's the possible steps forward, which is the possibility of shifting the land use standing committee to a ad hoc committee with the vice chair, which would be me right now, but the vice chair going forward, sort of being the person who receives the reports from Permit Sonoma for potential permits that would be relevant for us, and then working with the chair to call an ad hoc for permits that we think would be relevant for us, so that we're a little more flexible. Because right now we've only had a handful of meetings of the land use standing committee, and so I think we do have some work to do on getting those permits. We've had Elise and I have had several discussions with Permit Sonoma about how those permits come into both me and how we can process those. But the bigger issue is that I don't think we're getting all the relevant permits. So we will be working on getting more of those. But I think the question of whether we need a standing committee, I think, is a little more open. And I know that the members of the standing committee, Scott and Beth and Marty may have some thoughts about that, but for me personally, I think it may make more sense to go back to an ad hoc.
Okay, we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
And then Scott, did you want to?
Is that an invitation to speak to this? Yeah, when we envisioned this, it came from the marathon. It sort of descended upon our community unexpectedly. And we designed this to try to give us a chance to make events and major community-oriented projects fit better. It's not to create a bureaucratic hurdle, but rather to open conversation so things work better. And I think we learned that events were ministerial, and that became a block. And then not getting notification, at least feeling we're not getting notification. So I think there's a lot of improvement to be found. I'll just say that.
Yeah, and maybe we'll put this on the agenda to sort of consider more thoroughly for the November meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. Are there any suggestions for future agendas, the November one or going forward? And everybody, oh, Scott.
Yeah, again, at state parks, Fort Ross, Salt Point, have really dropped their ball for their mission. And I've mentioned this before, but in terms of access to the coast, they have a big portion of it. And with the closures and the closed restrooms and closed parking lots, closed campgrounds over long periods of time, I just wish we could get something going on that.
Okay, let's see how big the water issue is going to be on the November agenda. And Brian, if you and Paul could work on that over the next couple of weeks, because if we're going to ask state parks to come to the November meeting, we need to give them plenty of notice to do that. And if you would work on that, and so we can get a sense of the extent of the issue that we're going to consider in November.
Yeah, and I think it would be a good idea to have someone from state parks, because I know they had a big budget cut that wasn't really fully restored,
right,
literally 12, 13 years ago. But that being said, with all the stuff that we've been going through with the local coastal plan, but it seems like in many cases, as what Scott said, that it is state parks who has been the biggest impediment towards coastal access.
Yes, and I agree that it's a significant issue. But I always feel really guilty when we go past 7:30, because it's a 2-hour meeting at night and people are tired. And so that's why I suggested that we get an estimate of whether the water issues are going to take up the whole meeting, or whether we can consider both of those things in enough time to invite all the relevant people and get it on their calendars.
Agreed.
Okay. Beth?
Yes, I would like to have an agenda item coming up. And it sounds like this next meeting might not be the one, but where we explore having a booth or a table at different community events. I think that is an unused avenue, inviting people to our meetings and then encouraging others to join our membership. I belong to a couple of other different organizations where we are utilizing that more, and it seems to be very productive.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other issues? Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Okay.
Oh, we need a
Oh,
second.
I guess we need
second.
a roll call.
Okay,
I second.
here we go. Okay, I have a second, thanks.
Or
Marty,
third.
I'll go ahead with the roll call here. Beth,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Marty,
Aye.
Abby,
Aye.
Wanda,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and Ginny.
Aye.
Great, adjourned at 7:35.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you, Supervisor Hopkins, for another incredibly long day. We appreciate it.
And please give Elise our best regards. And we're all
Yes.
thinking of her.
Saw her today. She looked okay.
Oh, good. Good to hear.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. We
Okay,
appreciate you.
thank you.
Thanks to all the attendees who
Leo.
lasted through.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Bye.
Great.
Okay.